All right. Well, I'm back. We'll go ahead and get started today. I think I've got everything set up here for us. Um, Thanks everybody for joining us today. Today is Data Form Day. We're going to be talking about the big new feature that we just added in Impact Dashboard about a week ago, um, where we'll be able to create and customize data forms and then make them available to prospects to send their information back to you. So let me, I think I got everything set up here. So here we go. Again, this is I think like day 4 or 5 of I think it's day 4 of our webinar series where we're trying to go over in detail all of the different features that we've added recently. Today we're going to be focusing on that data form feature around collecting or gathering economic development project data. And so we'll kind of go through the whole process there. A couple weeks ago, or last week, I guess, on Tuesday, we looked at the data form a little bit. We'll kind of pick up there and then go a little bit further and talk about how we can configure those data forms and how you can, see the responses that come in from submitted forms. So the agenda for today, we're going to walk through that experience the new data form as a prospect would, just so that you as the client will understand what the prospect's experience will be like using the new data form wizard. And then we'll review the branching and the available questions, so that'll help you kind of understand the ordering of the questions, or in certain cases we would ask about the company's current operations, and other cases we would not ask them about that. And then just the available questions we have kind of printed out, and the easiest way I think is to see that on a PDF, so I'll share that with you in a minute. And then after we kind of get our head wrapped around the whole thing, we'll go in and we'll be able to configure a template. So this is where you'd be able to customize your form so that it includes the questions you want to include, or change the text in certain areas and all of that. And then ultimately, the key piece of this, which is different and which is kind of new from the prior data form or the data request feature, is where now it's a little different on sharing a template. You can send it by email, but you can also grab a link that'll let clients or let prospects generate their own fresh, unique version of that data form. So here's our calendar again. We are on September 22nd talking about data forms. We've got one more webinar here on Thursday of this week. Got it listed as a little bit of a recap and a Q&A. I anticipate to have a little bit of an agenda for that, assuming we don't get to everything here. Kind of talking about all of these new fields that we're able to collect on a data form. They're going to be available to you in a scenario as well. So even if you don't use the data form to collect the information, they're going to be available to you within a scenario. So if you do know that information, if you get it some other way and you research it, you'd be able to fill in all of that information on a particular project, even if you didn't use the data form as a starting point. So I think we'll be talking about kind of that aspect of it, of working within the scenario and working on the fact sheet, the project fact sheet. We'll touch on that on Thursday, but really any kind of questions that folks might have at that point will be fair game. And certainly today, as you have questions, feel free to type those in. Either the Q&A thing or the chat box also works for however you need to do it. So new features are live. They were released last week. They're available to all users. They're accessible in previously created scenarios, so that's all good news. One little bit of a heads up, and some of you might have seen this, we recently had a little bit of a hiccup with logos and some other files, and so we're working on restoring those logos and some of the other files. So if you've logged in the last couple of days and you saw that your logo wasn't there, or there was like a broken link, we're working on getting those back up, and you can certainly, if you see that the link is broken, you can kind of upload your logo again and you'll be all good to go. We touched on what's new kind of multiple times already. I'll highlight the link here at the bottom, and actually we'll paste that. Nicole, if you can, let me see. I think I can figure it out here. We're gonna send this link out to everyone, so you can go to our website, because we're actually going to use that today. Let me jump over and grab that link real quick. The best way, right there. So I'm just putting this in the chat box. So if you want to click on that and kind of follow along today as we're working on things, we can do that. So that link is going to have the very first thing is the handout that's going to have some useful information for us. And then there's a big orange button on there that we're going to click in just a minute to kind of look at what the data form looks like and to kind of walk through a data form as if we were a prospect. Just a couple notes about our new knowledge base and support. We've touched on this every time we've had one of these webinars, but just a quick summary. Again, feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions, either by phone or by email. We do have this new knowledge base out there that has a lot of written material and videos and pictures of things. And then we have a general support page that we created here where you can even, if you want to, you can schedule a time to meet with me right there from my calendar. So all very cool stuff. So data form, inbox, and templates. So we've looked at some of this already. I'm going to just kind of review it again for us, just kind of comparing the old way, the previous way, and then the new feature. So in the old app or in the previous way that we could do this, we could request basic information from a prospect. And if you remember, that was when you were on the project control center, there was a button at the top. One thing said like add a scenario. The other one said request data. And if you clicked on that, you could send an email to a prospect. And that was going to send a data form specific to that project to a prospect. And the responses, if they filled that out, that would come right back to that project, and you would be able to create a scenario with the data that was submitted. So that was all pretty basic. You didn't have any control over what questions got presented on that data form, and it was really just limited to the types of information we wanted to run an impact analysis. And the nice thing was, though, at the end, you could kind of just create a scenario with the click of a button. Now, we've kept that feature of being able to create a scenario with the click of a button after receiving some information, but we've kind of expanded this whole data form idea and the gathering of information from prospects and to expand beyond just those impact numbers that we're trying to get. So kind of beyond just the job count and salaries, for example. So now you'll be able to configure a custom data form template, and you can include the specific questions that you want the prospects to answer. And then you'll have two ways to share the data form. One is going to be that kind of same old way of being able to send out an email. The other one is where you'll get a link where you can post this link on your website or put it in your email signature. And if someone clicks on that, it'll generate that brand new instance of the data form for them to fill out and send you their information. So you don't have to send it to them. They would be able to kind of request that new data form, so to speak. And then the process by which the people are filling out, the prospects are filling out their data forms is a little bit different. We've got a kind of reworked data form wizard. So we've got branching logic, as I mentioned, that will let you collect existing activity and separate from the new activity metrics. And then the really cool thing that I like about it is having your responses, or the prospect will see their responses summarized in a bullet point outline of all of their responses before they hit submit. And then you'll see that bullet point list as well. So you'll have kind of the raw data, but then you'll also have this nice summary that kind of hits the high marks of the information of the project. And so now in the future here, as we have the new inbox, we're going to receive those completed data requests in this data form inbox. And so you'll get them kind of in one common place, and then you'll be able to kind of assign them to individual projects. And you'll also be able to manage in-progress data forms as well. So you'll be able to see who has started a data form, how far along they are, and then even be able to kind of jump in there and take a look at what they've submitted or what they've entered so far even. And if they need help getting back to it, for example, they lost the link or something like that, or you see that it's not submitted, you can always help them get back to that lost, quote unquote, data form. And everything now has been optimized for you to kind of generate PDFs off of this or print them out. So in the past, you could kind of print some of those things, but it really wasn't optimized for that. But now everything will look really, really nice as you print things out. So the workflow in general, we've looked at this graphic already, is shown here. So we've got this idea that we're going to configure a data form template where we can customize those fields and inputs. Then we're going to share that data form with prospects. You've got a couple ways to do that. And then you'll be able to track those in-progress data forms and resend them if you need to. And then when you receive a data form, you'll be notified, and the data form will be appearing in your inbox. From that point, you can view and print. But then really, most folks, what you'll want to do is create a new project or create a scenario for a project, and then generate the project fact sheet, which we've seen in action as well. So that's the big idea, so to speak. Let's take a look here. This is a just the flow chart for the data wizard, so excuse me, the data form wizard. We kind of start here at the top. So we have this section that we kind of call welcome generally. So the idea is you're going to have a welcome screen. You can kind of greet the user however you want, say, hey, send me your data, or, you know, we appreciate you considering our community, that kind of thing. Whatever you want, you'll have your logo on it. And then the first question is going to ask for the name, the email, and the person's role. And then the third question gets right to this business type question. So does your project, or does the project represent a new business that will be, you know, a brand new business to the community, or does it represent an existing business in the community that will be expanding? And so based on that, we've got our branching set up. So if they just say it's a brand new business, we don't need to ask anything about current operations. So we just say, tell me about the project. What are the project specifics? And there's a whole number of fields associated with this. And then if it is an existing business, we would want to ask about their current operations. And then ultimately, do you plan to an expansion or not? And so that would tell us if we need to pick up the details regarding the expansion. So you're really just going to go, when someone's filling this out, they're going to go down either this side if it's an existing business, or they're going to go down this side if it's a new business. Everybody kind of comes back together here as we have a section that allows prospects to put in supporting details, so additional descriptions, text descriptions, or maybe upload documents and files. And then beyond that, after we kind of get all the details of the project out of the way, we might want to collect some information about the company. And then we have the final review section, which I described as kind of summarizing that information back to the prospect. And then finally, once the user is ready, they can click submit. So that's the big idea on the data form wizard, that flow chart. This flow chart is available to everyone on a download handout, and it actually will detail out all of the different sections. So or questions within, say, for example, project specifics, it'll have all the available questions for it. So you can kind of look at it in the app, you'll see it there, but this handout that we created is really, really useful for you as well. So if you click if you notice in the chat, in the Zoom chat, I pasted this link. This is out to the blog post, kind of just talking about the update. And I'm going to go over there right now, and we'll kind of pick up from there. So this is that website that I just sent the link to. The very first thing, there's a link here. It says handout for Impact Dashboard users, September 2020. If I click on that, that is a PDF. That's going to have that data form wizard workflow. It's also going to list out all of our questions. So the first few pages here are just kind of talking about some of the things we addressed last week around customizing your account, so you can kind of put in your key industries and so forth. We'll skip over those pages of this PDF. And we scroll down here, we get into talking about creating a data form template and so on. And then just for your access, you've got this PDF where you can see, here's that flow chart that we just looked at in my PowerPoint, but here you have you kind of take it with you. And the final few pages on this is gonna kind of show you what questions are in each one of those sections. So for project specifics, we can ask for questions about their company's plans. And so are they going to be leasing space, or, you know, building something new, that kind of thing. So I'm not going to go through this here. We'll actually be able to see them in action on the wizard, but this can be a helpful handout to kind of keep handy if you're trying to just get your bearings inside that the new data form wizard as you're kind of creating the template and so forth. So that is one thing from this website we can click on. Again, this is the handout for Impact Dashboard users. It's taking you to that PDF we just looked at. And then the other thing that we want to look at is this submit your data to see the new data form wizard as a prospect with experiences. So this is where we can click on this link. And again, this is my kind of setup, my example of a data form. So we can do that right now. I'm going to open this in a incognito window, but you don't have to necessarily. If I click on that, it's going to generate a new instance of our data form. And now you can see here this initial screen. This is kind of our welcome screen. As I was talking about, we had a couple intro screens. We've got some text here. This is kind of my generic text a little bit. You know, you can modify in the template, and we'll see that in a minute. You can modify this text and write whatever you'd like. Your logo is going to appear there, and you'll have some contact information appear here. And again, you can modify the specifics of all of that. Now, if I hit get started, we're going to kind of go into the first screen of our wizard. And this is where, right off the bat, we want to grab you know, a little bit of contact information, not a full detail on, you know, company and who all the owners are and everything, just some real quick information. So I can put in, I'll put this in as myself, and it'll be a little weird that I'm sending a data form to myself when we see, you know, who has filled things out, but it'll be best to do it that way. So I'll say Paul, and I don't have to put my last name, but I could if I want, but, you know, we'll just leave it at Paul. I'll put my real email address here. Then it's asking, saying I am, and then it says my role essentially. So we're looking, just kind of trying to figure out who's the person filling this out. And so this can provide some context if you're looking at the inputs that they've submitted, or the name of the person is maybe different, or the name of the email address here is different than the business, let's say. Maybe then that's the site consultant that was doing it. But this can help do that. I'll just select one of these. Really doesn't have a bearing on anything except for to provide context to you as you're interpreting what they've submitted to you. If I hit next on this, it's going to tell me that we're saving the information. So it says, thanks, Paul, we're saving the information. Go. We just sent an email to the email address that I typed in with a link to this data form in case I need to return later. One thing I should say, so I now have an email in my my inbox that has a link back to this. I'm going to hit got it. The one thing I'll say, in that last screen where we had the 3 inputs with the name, the email address, and then the role of the person, those are required fields. If I would have tried to go to the next slide without putting in that information, it would have stopped me and said, hey, you got to fill this out. If we'll talk more about a couple of those types of wrinkles about what has to be filled out and so forth when I get through this. I've got a couple slides about that. Now this third slide is really kind of the setup for the entire wizard that we're going to see. As we remember, we had that branching logic, and it was based off whether it was a new business or an existing business. And this is specific to new to your community or an existing business in your community. So it doesn't matter if it's a company that, oh, they were founded in 1855 or something. What we specifically mean is, do you currently have operations? Would there be like a retained component, so to speak, to this project? And so depending on what the user selects here, they're going to get to see a different version of the app. I guess just for the purposes of this, I'm going to hit existing business so that I will see fields and inputs about their current operations. So if I hit next, now we'll go into kind of the main data form wizard. And so what we can see here, just, you know, kind of getting our bearings as what we're looking at, we've got the different sections over here. So current operations is the big section we're in. We've got sub items below it. So these are all the steps along the way as we're going to fill things in. Then we have another section for expansion. So there would be additional fields under expansion. And then you can see supporting details, company, and review. So again, kind of tying back to that data form workflow chart. Up here in the left-hand corner, we've got our logo. So this is, again, my kind of like generic Economic Development Corporation logo, so showing you kind of where your logo would appear. So if you're in here, you would see your logo. If a prospect is filling it out, they're going to see your logo. It has a link for contact. So if I click on this, I actually modified it a little bit just for our purposes, but this would generally have your contact information, but you can configure it in the wizard. So if I click on this, it actually pops up and has that flow chart again. So I've actually been able to kind of modify this and customize it. Normally, it'll be relatively short. The contact information will pop up here, and you'll see, you know, the name, phone number maybe, and the email address. You can decide what information you want included there. I went an extra step further to kind of add, you know, this extra text as well as this graphic. So, I mean, realistically, you could as well kind of put a graphic in there if you wanted to. But in my case, because we're using this to kind of illustrate how this whole thing works, and this is intended for our clients to see it, we've put the wizard flowchart here so you can kind of get a sense for that. So just as we're looking on this left-hand side, if you remember, we had the welcome screens. There were 2 screens, and then we asked about business type, whether it was new or existing. And then once we went to existing business, now we're seeing our sections for current operations, expansion, supporting details, company, and review there. So this is kind of helping us understand that a little bit more. So that, again, was just an example of some stuff here. Normally, you would just see the first part of the contact information. Up here, this is something you get to control as you set up a template. This just says, it's kind of generic right now. It says ED Corporation data sheet. So if you were, you know, city XYZ incentive application, you could change that and change what the phrasing is, what it says. So you will have complete control over that, but that's just kind of an anchoring piece there. And then over here, we also have this save and come back button. So on every page or every section of the wizard, as we step forward, we'll have this ability to click on save and come back. So we just want to kind of make sure, you know, we're going to come back to this later. So I'm about to close this out. I can hit save and come back. And that's going to give me one more shot to check my email. So to confirm that I've got the right email here, and then we'll email that unique link back to this email address so that, you know, I would be able to get back to it later, or I could even forward it to a colleague if maybe they were going to be the one to kind of pick it up from where I left off. So at every point, you're going to be able to kind of hit that save and come back. You'll also have access to the contact area if they're looking for, maybe they have questions and they just want to see who they should talk to. Again, that's going to be your information. We're not going to be directing folks to us necessarily to answer questions about your projects or sites and so forth. So in this data form wizard, so if you've clicked on the link, if you're kind of following along in your own browser with me, you may be looking at this and say, man, there's a lot of questions on here that maybe I wouldn't want to include, or that it just seems overwhelming. I might want to make a shorter version of this, and you can absolutely do that. So if you, if when we get to the part where we're going to customize the template, you'll be able to see we've basically enabled certain fields, and we can disable fields. In this case, because it's an example, I've enabled every possible field. So it's going to look kind of like a lot of stuff to fill out, but you know, you can control that. So let's just go through here. I'll just type in some stuff so we can put in an address, and we can indicate whether we own or whether we lease it, or maybe some other kind of weird arrangement that we can describe out here. If we lease it, we might ask you know, the date the lease ends. So we might want to just be curious about that. So maybe it's March 2021, maybe. There we go. So we'll put stuff in here, and I'll kind of show each one of these screens. I'll go relatively fast, but I think it makes sense to put some stuff in here. We have a question where we'll ask about square footage. And so again, we're focused on the business's current operation. So how much square footage do they currently occupy? Let's just make stuff up here for us. Maybe it doesn't make any sense here as we do it, but we'll say they have 50,000 square feet of office, and maybe they have, you know, they could have maybe 50,000 square feet of manufacturing as well. So we're capturing it by the use type and in getting the total. Now we have a field where we're going to ask about essentially we're trying to get to the NAICS code, or what activity they're doing there locally. So we could ask them to type it out into words. So what service or product are you producing at the local site, just so that you can kind of make sure that it lines up with what they're doing here. We can do, we don't have to put in values. As I mentioned before, not everything is mandatory, but I will put in something here. Let's just do like manufacturing, my farm machinery here. And let's just say, we make tractors, right? And so we're filling this thing out. If I click next, again, this is our current operation. So we want to know how many of existing employees do you have? Again, I'll make up some numbers here. We've got 100 existing workers making $50,000 a year. And now we want to ask about the market value of the property that we own, or maybe that we support. So we can put in a value here. If we own some property, let's say, let's just put in $1 million there, and some equipment. Let's put in 2.5 million there. And we can see that. If I hit next, one of the things, just we've got inventories here. So this is my sample client here is in Texas, where Texas still taxes inventories. If you're in a state that doesn't tax inventories, you won't see inventories on yours. Now, as we're kind of moving through, and we're moving slowly a little bit here, we're still asking about current operations, and we want to know, are there any taxables currently, any taxable purchases or taxable sales, or do you support any hotel nights? Again, we've got all the questions enabled, so we don't necessarily need to ask these in every instance, but we've got them all enabled here. So we'll leave these blank, I suppose, or actually we'll throw in a little bit and move on. And then let's say they support 500 hotel nights. And this is their current activity. So now we're asking, do you plan to hire more workers or make additional capital investments? So yes, an expansion is planned, or no, an expansion is not planned. So if they were to say no, no expansion, what we would do is essentially skip this next section. I think in most cases, folks would be saying yes to this. So if we say yes, we'll just continue on with our inputs about what they plan to do. So now we've got a little bit of a reminder or highlight box here, just saying now we'd like to know about the expansion plans, indicate the incremental or additional activity that you plan above and beyond the current operations activity already entered. So again, we had like 100 jobs. That was the current number of jobs. We would be looking for the person to put in the new job, so to speak. And so specifically now we want to involve leasing or owning property. What are we planning? And so let's say we're going to purchase some buildings and renovate them. We could say land purchase. There's a couple of good options here. They can even select other, and then if they say that, they can explain what that is. If I hit next here, we want to understand their timeline. And so we might say, when do you plan to break ground? So let's make it line up with the end of that lease, right? So March 2021, or actually that's when they would begin operations, let's say. So they're going to start October 2021. That would be a quick timeline, but we'll just go with it. So we're trying to get a sense of their timeline here, their needs. And then we want to know about the site. So if they've actually identified a site, we'll just use that same address that I was using here. And we can describe any special site requirements. So I don't know, if you need like, they might say things like what they need in terms of utilities, or they need rail access, or they need, they're looking for a highway, need to be near a highway or something like that. So they could type in potentially any special site requirements that they might have. Again, we're still kind of stepping through here. We're in this expansion section, kind of going through these fields as we see here. There's a lot of them. I'll pick up the pace a little bit. So let's do, they're gonna add, let's say they're gonna add another 25,000 square feet for manufacturing. And now we've got it a little bit more detail here around the products and industry. So the service or product to be produced at the local site, and then the main service or product produced company-wide. So there's a little bit of a distinction here that may not always be the case. So if you think of like a Toyota as recently, or in the last, 5 years or so, came to Texas. The headquarters relocated to Texas. And so the main service or product that the company makes would be, they manufacture cars, but the service or products produced at the local site is really just their headquarters. They're not manufacturing cars, for example. So that might be useful to understand, and it might help you better analyze the project. So if they tell you, again, making this up as the Toyota example, if they tell you, it's a headquarters, the main thing we do is like manufacture cars, when you see that, you would want to change this to be what they're actually doing at the local area, which would be the headquarters activity. So it wouldn't be, we wouldn't want to see the NAICS code for manufacturing cars here. We would want the NAICS code for headquarters activity. It's a little confusing since I just set this up for the other manufacturing, but that's the concept behind those fields. If we wanted to just try to get them to talk it through, so they explain a little bit more about what they're planning, it can help you kind of fill in some of the gaps. Now, to be clear, you don't need to ask these questions. So if you think it's a little bit repetitive and you don't want to ask these fields, you could just ask for the NAICS code. And this kind of tells us that we want them to focus on the activities to be conducted in the community, and it kind of clarifies that auto manufacturer's headquarters thing there for you in the tooltip. But that's just showing you some of this range of information. Next up, we're asking about the number of jobs to be created. So here, this would be if they were going to hire some new workers. Let's do 25 in year 1 and 25 in year 2. So we're phasing in 50 jobs over 2 years. And the average salaries of those workers, you're kind of familiar with some of these. We're asking it just over 5 years here. Right now, it's just fixed at 5 years. In your analysis, you'll still be able to kind of do it for whatever term or time period you want to look at. But as far as asking these inputs of the asking these inputs of the project or of the prospect, we are doing it with just 5 years. Quick question that came in. Will the NAICS code of the project, if different from the expansion, guide the multipliers? Yeah, so this kind of ties in a little bit with what we looked at in the webinar last Thursday. And you could potentially have NAICS code and multipliers for their current activity. So let's say that they currently have a manufacturing plant in your city. And then the expansion part of the whole deal is that they're going to bring their headquarters back. And so realistically, you would have two different NAICS codes. So you would say it's manufacturing in their current ops and its headquarters in the expansion part. And in the model, in the scenario, when you're actually analyzing it, you'd be able to select those two separate NAICS codes, or if they provided the data for you, it kind of fills in. But you would have inputs, one for their current operations, one for their expansion, and then the multipliers would differ in those cases. So yes, that's possible and fully accounted for. Sure. So salaries over the first 5 years, we'll just put in, let's actually put a different number than the 50,000. Let's do 75,000. These new guys are going to make a little bit more for some reason. If I hit next, now this one is getting a little goofy. So we've got this, we asked about jobs and salaries separately, and now we're asking for job and salary details. So this is where someone could type in all of the different positions that they plan to hire, how many employees of each category. So maybe it's, technicians, we're going to hire 10 of those or something, and 12 of some other category, managers or something, right? And you can put in the average salary for each one, and then we'll calculate the overall average. I'm not going to step through that and do all of this right now just because I'm already typing in a bunch of stuff. But they can add as many rows as they want here and kind of give you the full breakout of the jobs and salaries and so forth. Next up, we're asking about benefits. So here, they can tell you what types of benefits they offer: paid time off, health insurance, other insurances, retirement, tuition reimbursement, other, and they can give a description of other. We might want to ask them what's the value of those employer provided benefits, and then you could even ask what eligibility requirements they have for those benefits. Again, I'm not going to plug anything in here. Next up is kind of capital investment. This is one of our familiar ones. We should all kind of recognize this one. I'll just put in a small amount here, maybe whatever. I think this really isn't making much sense based on a consistent project, but I'll just throw some numbers in. I should have had a good example worked up, but I apologize. Next input is inventory. So again, we're asking about taxable inventories, and this applies to clients that are in states that still tax inventory. So for example, Florida folks, you're not going to have this as an option. You won't have to even disable it. It won't be available to you because we know it's not something that's relevant to you. Next up is taxable purchases or taxable sales. So we've got inputs here. Same type of thing for this. Like we have some clients in Indiana where at the local level, there are no local sales taxes. So same thing here. You wouldn't necessarily see these inputs unless they apply to your area. But for Texas folks and most of our Florida folks, it's going to be here. We can put in a value in year one and then let it increase by whatever amount, just like we do in some of our other places. And then we ask about hotel nights. And so what we're doing, the big idea behind hotel nights is we're going to ask how many hotel nights, what's the hotel daily rate or nightly rate, so to speak, to get our lodging spending. Just kind of multiply it. It's 100 hotel nights times $125. That's going to give us our lodging spending, which we can generate or calculate some hotel taxes. And then if those visitors, so those folks who are spending a night in the local hotel, they might spend some money elsewhere in the community, like restaurants or somewhere, we can pick up a little bit of just general taxable spending from those hotel visitors per hotel night. You could even use this model, and it's maybe not the easiest way to see it, but hotel nights here. So for example, if they told you it was a brand new hotel, we're going to have 50 rooms and we expect 70% occupancy, you can kind of do the math to get the total number of hotel nights there. And you'd be able to plug that in. So you can think of this in terms of visitors, like, visitors coming to this manufacturer, or you could think of it as, visitors that are coming to the new project itself, which is the hotel, for example. I'll hit next here. And now we're into our supporting details. So we have two sections here, or two sub-items, I suppose. One is project background. This is fully flexible input for you. You can modify the text that you see here. I've chosen to describe this one as please provide any additional background that would be helpful in reviewing the project. You can change this to say, hey, write a description of your project or explain what incentive you're applying for or whatever you would want. And then they can fill out in text form here anything that you're prompting them for. If I hit next, we've got a place where folks can attach documents. So you can have them drag drop documents or click and navigate to the folder. And again, this is fully flexible for you. So you'd be able to kind of go in and modify this text. I'm using kind of the default that says, please attach supporting documentation that may be helpful in reviewing the project. So, you know, again, if you wanted to list out certain documents that you wanted them to provide, like, you know, a site plan or, you know, hiring schedule, whatever it might be, you could list that out. And if you had, maybe even you had a document that you needed them to complete separate and apart from this, a document you wanted them to fill out and sign or whatever and scan, you could link to that document here as well. And then they could, once they fill it out and, you know, scan it back in themselves, they could upload it here. And so all of that can be done through this, this feature here for supporting details. Then if I hit next, the next section we're going to hit is company info. And again, we've got a lot of fields that we're going to be looking at. Not all of these are necessary. You can kind of enable and disable certain ones. So we were asking for the company name. I'll just, you know, make something up here. ABC Incorporated. Is the company name confidential? We can say yes or no here. And essentially, if we say yes, just means that on that project fact sheet, we will say, you know, company name confidential. If you say it's not confidential on the project fact sheet, it'll actually say company name ABC Incorporated here. We can do our company headquarters, wherever. I'm just making stuff up. And we can say the name of the company, you know, or excuse me, the name of the parent company, so XYZ Corp or something like that, right? You can just, you know, imagine if you want to collect that information, it's useful. Company website as well, if you want to ask them to enter their company website. So that's the basic company info. Here we're asking about some background. So what year was it established? You know, maybe it was in the year 2000. It was formed in Texas, let's say. And then you can choose your business structure. We've got a good range here. Maybe it's a C Corp or S Corp. We'll put a C Corp. And then we can say, is the ownership public or private? So maybe it's a publicly traded stock. So we can say it's a public company. If I hit next here, we have one around employment distribution. This one is really just trying to, you know, I've seen it on enough data forms. I thought it was kind of an interesting question, so I've included it here. Not something you necessarily have to include, but the idea behind it would be just to get the context of how concentrated this business is. And, you know, if maybe, you know, they have thousands of employees worldwide and you're just, you know, represent, you know, 150 of those employees, then, you know, that's one way to understand, you know, how this project maybe fits into the company overall. Or if, you know, they happen to, you know, maybe they have 1,000 employees and you have 850 of them in your community, that can be helpful to know. So they might put in things like, you know, 50 in, or well, actually, I guess maybe at least 100, and then employed in the USA, maybe it's 150, and then they have 150 worldwide. So that's something like that. So you can get a sense of, you know, how concentrated they are and how concentrated they are specifically in your community. If I hit next, now we're kind of wrapping back around to those initial questions. So if you remember, the very first question I was asking was, what's your name, what's your email address, and kind of what's your role? Here, we're kind of just asking the final question before we get to the review, is this point of contact. So I had put in only Paul. I might want to come in here and add my last name to that now that I'm all the way through it. I can put my title, you know, whatever, you know, owner or something like that. And then I can put in my phone number if I wanted to, and I can modify this email, for example, if I, you know, maybe I started the data form, but then I forwarded it to someone else because I didn't know all the answers. And so maybe the point of contact who you should contact regarding the questions might be someone different than who filled out that first screen, let's say. So you'd have the chance to modify that. Now, if I hit next, this is where we go to our review. And this is really nice. I really like this feature. I think this is one of the big improvements over the typical Word data form or PDF data form. Number one, we're doing it electronically, so we're heads and shoulders above that process of doing it, as a scanned document. But really, we get to kind of just repeat back the information that I submitted about this project and kind of give me the opportunity, even in real time, to edit different fields. So what this is telling me, we can see everything's bolded as the pieces that I've put in. So for example, this project represents an existing business. The project has a site and that we currently lease. The lease ends on March 2021. The company occupies 100,000 square feet total, which include manufacturing and office. So we can kind of, we won't go through each one of these, but I really think this is a good way to read back, in a shortened, abbreviated form, and make sure everybody was on the same page with what was being asked and how we're interpreting those responses. Let's say, for example, if I get to this and I say we currently employ 100 people with an average salary of 50,000, I say, hey, wait a minute, that's not exactly right. Let me click on this, and I can change those inputs right on the screen. I don't have to go back and kind of get lost in that long list of fields. Just right here, by clicking on that pencil icon, I can change this, and maybe I say, well, actually it was 100 workers, but they make $55,000 a year. I'll hit close. And so now we've updated that piece. And again, the little pencil icon appears when we kind of can hover over those things. So we're repeating back pretty much every question that they responded to. So even, we can see 0 documents were uploaded. I did not provide any additional background. I didn't type anything in there. This is just some of the company info. And if I'm all good with that, I can come down here and I can either print or I can submit it. If I print it off, we can just get that. You can see what that looks like. That summary, a nice little summary prints off there. The other thing that we have, so that's the data summary. The other one is this raw data. So again, just like we kind of had screen by screen there, if I hit on this raw data, we can see every section exactly as it appeared. And so we can see it that way if we prefer to it. But the data summary, I think, is really nice, so we start them on that. And so once we do that, like I say, we can either print or we can hit submit and send. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. Yeah, I'll do that. I was trying to think, should we show other things? But let's do that. And this just makes me confirm here, are you sure? So once you submit this form, you won't be able to make any more changes. So, once they send it into you, they can't make any more changes. You could send them a new data form, but you can't collaborate or edit on this form that they hit submit on. So if I hit submit, it's going to send it in. It says thank you here. This is configurable by you in the data form, so in the template, so you can change what that says there. You could even put in a link or something if you want to. And then this little yellow box is telling us, hey, the data form's been submitted. You can print and you can view this thing, but you can't make changes. So if you need to, contact the organization. So it would be, the same contact information there. So that's the way the data form works from the prospect's point of view. Let me jump back to our PowerPoint here real quick, and I'll kind of touch on a couple of things. So from the prospect's perspective, from their experience with the wizard, as I mentioned, there are only 3 required, there are only 3 required fields in the entire wizard. All 3 fields appear on that second screen of the wizard. We were asking for their name, their email, and the role. So their business owner or whatever it is, right? And so as soon as they complete that second screen of the wizard, we will email them a link so they can return to the data form if necessary. And they can even forward that maybe to a colleague. Our information, or the information that the prospect is entering, is constantly saved. So we have that button that says save and come back, but essentially as soon as they enter something, we're saving it. So even if they kind of get halfway through, they lose an internet connection or something like that, whatever they've entered, whatever they've seen, will have been saved in our analysis, or excuse me, saved in our database. The contact link, as I mentioned, clicking on that logo or the little link that says contact, that will have your information. You can configure it however you'd like in the template. The save and come back button, that's just another opportunity for them to check their email, that was a good email address, and then send that link so they can return later. They've got the review, print, and submit option there at the very end. Let's see. Quick question there about when I was submitting that. Is there a pop-up message when they hover over submit so they know in advance that no changes are allowed, much like any submit button on the internet? Well, I think maybe we went a little fast. I don't know that I can do it again. But when I hit submit, there was a big pop-up that said, hey, are you sure you want to submit this? If you hit submit, you cannot make changes to the fields after the fact. And so they have to confirm yes to that. And then if they say that's all good, that's when it drops into this where it's read only. If they were to say, no, I'm not ready to submit because now I've been told that I can't make changes to it afterwards, I will just hold off on sending it. Well, then if you just cancel out of that, you're good to go and you'll still be able to make changes. So you do get that pop-up that says, hey, are you sure you want to submit this? So review, print, submit. Again, those screens we just looked at. No changes can be made after they hit submit. I guess no changes after they hit submit and confirm that there are no more changes to be made. So let's go and take a look. We'll come back to that slide in a minute. Let's go to the actual app here. I'll show you first what it looks like when you receive a new data form. So when you receive a data form, you'll get an email in your inbox that says, hey, somebody submitted their information. Let's see if I can grab it. Yep. So we would get an email that says, hey, somebody submitted data. If we look at this, now I've kind of refreshed the screen. Sorry, I've been looking at the wrong pages here. And we can see that I've got a little icon here over the inbox showing me that I've received a data form. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm looking at on this wrong screen. I apologize for getting confused. Okay, so here we can see we've got 2 submitted data forms. So if I click on this, if I click on inbox, we'll go to a screen here and we can see here's the data form that I just submitted. So if I click on this, so if I wanted to see, okay, I got my email from Paul. What did he say? What did he submit? What's his project all about? And so now I can see it starts off with the summary, the bullet points that we just saw as I was submitting it. And then if I continue to scroll, this is going to be kind of you can see over here, it's a lot to scroll through, but we can see every field that I submitted. And we can see, because this is a submitted data form, I can't really make changes to it. So it's all kind of grayed out. I can't modify anything here. And it's really just showing me what you could think of as kind of just like a fixed PDF version of this, so to speak. Obviously it's not a PDF, but it's in the same way that you can't modify or change anything there on the PDF. This is the same case. So I can print this if I want. So if I wanted to print this off and save it as an actual PDF, we could do that and it would look really nice. It's all set up for us. And this one, it actually prints off to about 9 pages because there's a lot of fields that I included on this. So that's what it looks like. If I, again, go back to my inbox here, if I hover over this, again, clicking on it, just clicking on this bar lets me see the responses. I have 2 other options out here with our icons. The first one would be to assign to a project, and kind of as a sub item to assigning to a project, I can create a new project or I can assign to an existing project. So this is the idea that you've received a data form and now you want to go do something with it, maybe create a scenario and so on. So with that, you can put it and assign it to a project or create a brand new project and assign it with that. The other option obviously is to delete, and we could just, if, for some reason that wasn't a legitimate response, you can just hit delete there. But I will not go through that step right now. What I want to show a little bit is our in-progress data forms. So this is a list of all of my data forms that are in progress. We can see, I'll take a look at this one because this was one that I started earlier today, and I was just kind of, didn't get all the way through, but I was playing around and testing it, so to speak. And this is the one that I've started. And so if I were trying to help, in this case, help myself, but help the user get back to their data form. So they started one, but maybe they called up and said, hey, I started, but I don't know what happened. I don't know, I didn't, I need to get back to it. You would be able to click on here, number one, and when you click on it, you'd be able to see their responses so far. So they're not fully finished, right? Like maybe they've only selected the first response here, but they haven't filled out anything else. We see all this is blank. So I can get a sense of what they've done so far, and I can help get them back to this data form. So I could share this data form and send it to that contact. So that was the email address I used for this particular one. And the subject says, complete your data form or data request from ED Corporation. And so if I do that, if I send that link, it will give me an email to the prospect who was working on that in progress data form, and I'll give them that link to get back to it. The other thing would be to grab the actual long URL here, the full data form link, and copy that and send that to the prospect, and they could get back to their data form. So that's one thing we can see here with these in progress data forms. It's really nice to see how many times someone has started it and what they've filled out so far, and other things. If you get one that hey, I started one but I screwed it up, can you just delete it? Obviously you can just go over here and hit delete. Now, one thing that I want to touch on before we get into the templates, and I know we're kind of running out of time, but when a prospect clicks on that link, it's going to generate a unique link for them. And I've got a couple slides that kind of talk about this somewhere. Yeah, so here, I think the easiest way to see it is going to be to actually see it in action. So if I click on this, and let's say that I'm clicking on it a second time, it's going to say, hey, welcome back. Complete your in progress data form or create a new one. So I clicked on that link and it recognized me. And the way it did that was basically I had already started this data form in the same browser. And it had said, hey, I know you were the one working on this particular data form earlier. So if you're trying to get back to that, you should have had that unique link to this specific data form. But instead, what you did was you clicked on the, kind of give me a brand new data form again, right? So this link, when we say submit data, can be clicked on by anyone, and then it generates a unique data form for that time it was clicked. The only exception to that is if you've already clicked it on that browser, it'll try to recognize you and say, hey, wait a minute, you can create a brand new data form, but you might want to finish the one that you've already started. So we can see this one has one listed out, and if I hit complete, it'll let me just finish the one that I already started. Now what you'll notice here is, as I'm doing this, I'm only seeing this one because this is the one that I clicked on or that I began with my computer. If we go back to our in progress data forms, we've got a number of other ones that other folks have started, and I didn't get to see theirs. I wasn't offered, hey, you've already clicked on that link, finish their data form. So there's a lot of other ones that we see here that are not coming up in my list, and that's because it's recognizing me based on my browser. So that is a little bit of a trying to catch you so that you can jump back into the same one that you started, even if you kind of get confused and click that link again instead of the one that was sent to your email. So let me show you. I'll go to the PowerPoint now because now that makes a little more sense. So when we share a data form template, we have two different ways to do it. One would be to share it via email, and that generates the unique instance of the data form straight for that person, and you get copied as the client, you get copied on the email. And then at any point in the future, you can view the data form on the in progress page of your data form inbox, right? If you share via the link, this link can be posted on your website or placed in your email signature. Clicking on the link will generate a unique instance of the data form. Each time a different user clicks on the link, a new unique instance of the data form will be generated. Now, this is where we get into that kind of where we can recognize people. If someone clicks on the link several times, so in my case, that was what I was doing, we can recognize them and help them find lost or abandoned data forms. We'll identify the previously created data form based on the user's browser, so we can only recognize them if they're using the same computer and browser and assuming they haven't deleted all of their local storage in the browser. So that is what you were seeing there for me. It was recognizing me because I had previously started that data form on that browser with that without changing anything. So that is an important distinction to make, and that's different than, so this is on a template, and that's different than an in-progress data form. with the case of the in-progress data form, you will always get the unique link. So whether you email it or whether you grab the URL, it's always the unique link to the one that's in progress, right? I think that makes sense. So if you're talking about a very specific set of responses, that's the in-progress data form, you're always just going to get the full URL. When you have a template, which would be the template being what you configure to collect your responses, that's where you have the possibility of getting the link that you can post on your website, that each time it gets clicked, it will generate a brand new version. So let's see where we can configure those templates. We've got 5 minutes left and I'm getting to this point. So we will probably be talking about this next on Thursday during the next webinar as well. So that was the data form that I submitted. I don't want to go to that. I actually want to go to this. This is where I was showing you how we catch that. If I go back, and now I'm as a client again, we're in our inbox. We've got in progress. So we've got our inbox, in progress, and assigned. These are projects, or data forms rather, that I've assigned to an existing project. But here, if I click up here on the templates icon, or over here, we can click on templates, and we'll get to see all of our templates. In my case, I have 3 different templates that I've created. I've got 2 different versions of a data form, or excuse me, of the complete data form. So these 2 are kind of the same thing almost. The complete data form, and then we've got the basic data form. We've set this up for you. When you navigate to your page here, you'll see by default, you'll see 2 different data forms. You'll see the complete data form where every field is enabled. That was what we were looking at today in my example. In the, that's one version, that's the complete data form. Then we have one called a basic data form where we've got just certain fields enabled. Ones that I think are good ones to include, but by no means is it the final word. You guys all as clients can go in there and configure a data form that you want. So for example, you could just modify an existing template that you'll see in there, the 2 kind of that get generated. You could modify one of those 2, or you can create a new one. You can do this however you'd like. So if you wanted to only have one data form and that was the data form, you could do that. If you wanted to have different versions of it, depending on you wanted to have a very brief data form if it was just kind of at the preliminary stages, and then you want the more comprehensive one for projects that maybe are a little bit more on the way. So let me just show you here. If I click on this tile, I can see all of the different fields that I'm able to configure. So if we look at this, I've got on the left-hand side some checkboxes, and on the right side some different things I can configure. So for example, if we remember my data form, it said ED Corporation Data Sheet. That's where I can change it. We might want to make it to say, you know, Economic Development Project Questionnaire or something like that. Whatever your terminology is, you can modify this, and that would appear essentially. Let me show this. So that would show right here, this ED Corporation Data Sheet. So that's where that's going to pop up. Here's our contact information. This is that information that popped up when you clicked contact or clicked on the logo. The welcome text, this is what appeared on that very, very first screen where we said, you know, we had the logo and then it said on behalf of ED Corporation, we appreciate your interest and so forth. And then some of these fields you really don't have the option to turn on or off, but then you get into these and this is where you'd have the ability. So for example, relating to the project, that first screen we saw relating to the plans, we can ask, you know, what are your project plans? Do you want to lease space or build new and all that sort of stuff? And we want to ask about lease term. If we don't care about the response to that question, we could uncheck that. And if we wanted to ask that, but maybe we didn't even care about lease term, we could uncheck lease term so that doesn't even pop up. Maybe we don't care about the timeline, or maybe we don't care about necessarily breaking ground, but we just want to know when they begin local operations. We can do that. So you can kind of uncheck the whole section, or you can uncheck certain fields. So as I mentioned, this is the one where I've got all the fields enabled, and then I'm able to kind of remove certain ones that I want. So if I scroll down, we can see these sections are aligning with each one of those wizard slides. And you know, these should look kind of familiar because we just walked through it. Here's where we can get the supporting detail. As I mentioned, the additional project background. This is where you can type in a different prompt to ask them for things. And then when you ask them to attach documents, you might give them other prompts as well. Then we have those sections about the company. And again, we don't necessarily you have control over individual questions. So you could remove the entire section, or you might just say, hey, actually, we don't care about the headquarters address and we don't care about the name of the company or the parent company, excuse me. So you get full control over those. And then we're just kind of showing you there is a section for review and submit. And then the thank you, you can have your custom text here for that thank you screen that popped up. Now that's everything you configure. So that on this side, this is kind of allowing us to configure. If we wanted to preview our data form, so we've kind of made all our changes that we want, we can click on preview. And we've got it set up kind of two different ways here. So on this one, we can click preview wizard, and that will actually kind of just take you through what the wizard would look like. But if you don't want to click through page by page by page, you could actually just kind of see here, if you scroll down, we kind of go section by section, all on one page to make it a little bit easier to digest rather than having to click through each screen. But if you wanted to, this is nice because you can preview the wizard, and this is telling you the whole time, hey, this is a preview, we're not saving anything. So you'd be able to click through here and see every field. When you're in the wizard, the one nice thing is you don't actually have to enter values in here. In the real world, or excuse me, in the real data form, you're not going to be able to click through it and see it without putting some, dummy information in there at a minimum. And so when you're in this preview, you can click past that page. So normally you're required to put those fields, but not in the preview. And then you can kind of choose whichever way you want to go there. And then again, you could click through this whole thing and see the wizard as you have it configured for that particular template. If we go back to our template again, that's where we're going to preview, and we can see configure. One thing I'll point out is that we have this name here, which would be like complete data form illustration for clients. That's the one that I'm using to identify to myself what that data form is, or maybe what the purpose is. No one will ever see that name. They will only ever see this title. So when we have like display title here, this is what folks will see. So you could technically name it the same thing if you just wanted to call it your ED Corporation data sheet and you didn't have any distinction around what that particular version of the template looked like, that would be fine as well. Now, if I go back and just look at all of my templates, we can click over on this basic data form as well. This one, as I say, it's the basic one. We don't have all of the fields enabled like the other one. So we can see on this basic one, we're asking about the site, we're asking for the address, but not any of this other stuff. And we're asking for the NAICS code, but not some of these other fields. And as I scroll down through, you can see there's certain sections that I've disabled to kind of correspond to this basic data form. Now, as I mentioned, we were talking about, and it's a little past the hour. I'm going to go for just a few more minutes. If you need to jump off again, feel free. We'll continue a little bit of this discussion on Thursday as we continue to pick up with kind of rounding out all these new features from our update. But on an individual template, so once you've configured your template, you've got the exact one you want to use. Let's pretend it's this basic data form. And this is the one that I want to use. Let's say I want to share it on my website. So maybe I need to, go to my my IT guys and say, hey, I want a button on my website, and I want that button to go to this URL. So like that's my example here, where I have this orange button, and I want that button to go somewhere, and I can grab the link by clicking on this share. So for this template, I'm going to click on share, and I have two options. One is I can share by email, and that's where I'm just going to send it to one person, and I'm going to send them the very specific, unique version of the data form for them. So I can only really send it to one individual, and it will be that version, that that very specific, unique link for them. But if I want the link that can be shared, the one that you might give to your IT person to kind of put behind that link that the button that you're going to put on your website, you would grab this one. So on my template, I've clicked share, and now I can grab this URL, which it looks kind of long, but actually it's relatively short if we would compare that to what a full data form link looks like. So this one is just our link that's going to let us generate a new instance of this template every time someone clicks it. So this would be, so I can click copy here, and I copy it to my clipboard, it goes away. And so anytime, so I put that out and I change the link on my website, I use this URL that I just copied, I can put that there. And anytime someone clicks on it, it's going to generate a new version of the data form based on this these settings of the template. So that is how that's working. I know this is kind of confusing, so if you have questions, I think the easiest thing to do, because it really is no harm, really to play with it yourself. You can kind of send yourself, for example, send yourself the data form, and then walk all the way through and submit it, and you can kind of watch yourself starting to complete it, so you'll be able to see it maybe as in progress and so on. And then when you submit it, you'll be able to see it come in, and you'll really kind of understand the workflow. The one thing that is good to know, so if let's say that we put that button on our website, and we at the time we had given the correct URL to our IT person, and they put it up there. But let's say that over time you realize, oh, I need to change something about this. Maybe you want to remove one of these questions or add a question, whatever it might be. If you make those changes here to the template, and it would be tied to the version of the template that you have linked, you can make those changes in real time. So essentially that link will keep iterating and providing you a brand new version of the unique version of this template. So if you make changes today, every time that link gets clicked after today, it's going to give you the revised kind of version that correspond to the changes that you made. So for example, if you change the name of the display or something like that, you could do that. I'm going to kind of cut it off here. I don't see any questions right now, but I don't want to go too far over. We will pick up on this on Thursday and take a look at doing some things with the submitted data form. So by sending that to assign it to a project and creating a scenario from it. We'll also talk more about all of those fields and how you can access them. So things like square footage and so forth, where can we access those within a scenario if we need to modify them? And then just again, always being able to view a submitted data form will be part of this process. So you'll be able to kind of make a copy of this data form and start configuring it in a scenario, and it will allow you to make changes, but you won't be changing the actual submitted data form. You'll just be making changes to a copy of it essentially. So again, feel free to have your questions ready on Thursday. I don't see any in here right now, but we'll kind of continue through this data form feature. But in the meantime, feel free to kind of test it out by submitting data forms yourself. For example, you can do it on mine if you want, but you could certainly do it self-contained and submit your own data forms to yourself, so you can see a little bit more. Right now, if you just want to get a sense of the workflow and all that, you can certainly use this link that's on our blog. But if you want to see the in progress and all those things, you would be looking at data forms that you would create yourself. So thanks again for joining us. I'll talk to everyone on Thursday. Thanks so much.